So Marisa Pushee, The Hand That Grasps Anthropomorphism in Visual Representation of Non-Human Animals. Marisa is an Oakland-based artist, activist, and writer, a native of Massachusetts. Marisa received her BA from Hampshire College while she studied studio art and cultural anthropology and human-animal relations. Prior to attending CCA, she worked with captive-bred wolves and wolf dogs rescued from the exotic pet trade. Marisa currently works with the gorilla Coco at the Gorilla Foundation. Her interests lie in animal liberation, prison abolition and prisoner support, interspecies communication, art education, and implementing an intersectional approach to social justice. She spends her free time at the beach with her canine companion, Hijitaka Toshiko. Did I get close? No? Somewhat close? Okay.
Good morning. Thank you all for coming. Every day we encounter images of non-human animals. They provide us with comic relief and offer moralizing stories. They entertain us and have been doing so for a long time. Steeped in cultural history, these images, including the work of photographer William Wegman, shown here, draw on the complex relationship between familiarity and the uncanny that works itself out in the process of anthropomorphizing. Yet, anthropomorphism can take many forms. A gorilla looks at us. We do not see her eye, but the shining lens of the camera that she holds up, snapping an image of her own reflection. In October of 1978, National Geographic hit the stands with a new kind of celebrity. In the accompanying article titled "Conversations with a Gorilla," Dr. Penny Patterson relates the story of Coco, the talking gorilla, who became one of the first non-human primates to learn a modified version of American Sign Language. In this image of Coco, which has been read as a self-portrait, she points the camera at a mirror and takes her own photograph. Yet, for those of us looking at the image, she appears to aim the camera out at us. In the center of the frame, the lowland gorilla poses, facing her own reflection. Within the image, her body emerges from the lower left of the photograph, as if she happened to come upon her subject, her face slightly turned to a three-quarter view. Rather than face the viewer head-on, as if she were sitting for a formal portrait, the angle of her approach references that of a human coming upon a wild animal. With her camera, she captures the target, only the target is herself. Coco raises the camera to her eye, finger on the shutter. In the lens, her reflection shines back at her. We cannot read her facial expression, her face obscured by the camera. The apparatus that enables us to see her also prevents full visual access. The sharp, geometric lines of the camera contrast the organic shapes of her body. Smooth metal in contact with coarse fur on soft flesh. Her body, so similar to a human's, and yet different enough so as to feel uncanny. Behind her, a chain-link fence reminds us of her captivity. Appearing on the cover of National Geographic, this photograph became a media sensation and situated Coco as a celebrity, a figure of popular culture rather than of scientific inquiry or artistic merit. While this image has been read as a self-portrait, I argue that this reading would be both limited and anthropomorphic. We assume that Coco is having the same experience that a human would have when taking a photograph of themselves in a mirror. More than the use of a prop, we see value here because we read Coco's photograph as evidence of self-awareness. I do not argue that Coco lacks this level of self-awareness, but rather that this photograph is problematic in that it forces the non-human to use human language, in this case, art or photography, to establish themselves as a meaningful subject. Heidegger wrote that apes, too, have organs that can grasp, but they do not have hands. Throughout the history of Western thought, non-human animals have been measured against human standards, whether handedness, language, art, tool use, or mental and emotional capacity. While the 1978 photograph of Coco strives to disrupt long-held speciesist views of human superiority by showing how like us gorillas are, it does so only by extending a circle of empathy and rights, rather than disrupting the foundation of human-centric thought that those rights are based on. Here I turn to the work of German-born, London-based photographer Britta Jaschinski, whose photographs, featured in her books Zoo and Wild Things, as well as on her website, provide an alternative space for rethinking the relationship between human animals and non-human animals, embracing respect for difference and accountability. Turning away from the anthropocentrism that so heavily infiltrates our daily lives, Steve Baker argues that Jaschinski's black and white photographs hold to form while simultaneously undoing meaning. The birds shown in this untitled photograph, for example, resist species classification and individual identification, their wings and bodies blurring at the edges. Yet we are still able to read them as a collective of birds. By denying her viewers full visual access to her non-human subjects, Jaschinski maintains an anomalous individual while simultaneously shifting focus away from the singular personality of traditional portraiture and toward notions of multiplicity. Jaschinski's subjects are both seen and not seen. The work comments on our lack of knowledge. Undoing meaning while holding to form, her photographs allow non-human animals to remain other and to keep their identities for themselves. The tension between what is known or made visually accessible and what remains unseen, or what we, as human viewers, do not and cannot have access to, plays out in a loss of clarity within the image. The real animal is not the one we see, nor do Jaschinski's photographs endeavor to show us any unified truth about the animal. There is no unmediated encounter with non-human animals, no access to unified truth. Her work points to a lack of knowledge as well as an unlearning. Situated as the last photograph in a triptych, the figure emerges from the corner of the frame, a black silhouette on a white backdrop with clenched fist raised in the air. The figure rises up. We cannot see facial features, eye color, or facial expression. The orangutan's head and shoulders protrude from the bottom of the frame, their extended arm bent at the elbow below the frame and closed fist raised in the air. The black and white high-contrast photograph brings focus as well as ambiguity to the subject. There are no distractions to draw attention from the figure. Delicate wisps of fur indicate specificity. This is a distinct, individuated being, and yet anonymous. The figure can therefore act as a representative for many without losing a singular identity. This image does not relegate the non-human animal to the realm of the symbolic, nor does it deny the potential presence of a distinct, anomalous, individuated being. What photographer Britta Jaschinski does deny is full access to her viewers. In this choice, she shifts focus away from the question of subjecthood, turning attention instead toward resisting classification and embracing the unknown. However, we still tend to approach images, even those that don't dress dogs in human clothing, from an anthropocentric position as we read entire lexicons of human culture into them. Carrying its own anthropomorphism, the action itself could be read as a mark of agency, resonating with many rights movements. A fist in the air, workers' rights. A fist in the air, Black power. A fist in the air, women's rights. A fist in the air, animal rights. And here we could almost see a poster image for the movement, the oppressed figure displaying agency, rather than a human speaking on their behalf. Yet a human still made and distributed the image. Despite the limitations inherent in a member of one species depicting that of another, Jaschinski's images are productive in that they point toward an alternative view of non-human animals, one where we can embrace the unknown rather than relying on species hierarchies. When compared to Jaschinski's work, this 1978 photograph of Coco proves problematic in that it relies on her ability to perform what we read as human qualities in order to advocate for non-human autonomy. The otherness of the non-human animal, in this case the gorilla Coco, is not allowed to be. Instead, it is co-opted into human language. In order for us to regard a non-human animal as a maker, we need to see them using our tools. We look to Coco's use of a camera, elephants who paint, or chimpanzees with iPads, instead of investigating the other-than-human aesthetics of these animals themselves. The images of Coco that surfaced in the late 1970s and in the 80s rely on empathy to transform human-animal relations. Yet empathy proves limiting. Jaschinski's photographs comment on the non-human animal's mode of being as something separate from and intangible to the human, allowing non-human animals to maintain their otherness rather than co-opting them into a human language that would dress them in red capes and place cameras in their hands, forms of anthropomorphism that require us to compare non-human animals to human animals, a practice that proves problematic if we set ourselves as a standard by which to measure others. Jaschinski maintains a tension between the unknown and the recognizable, reacting against modernity's call to systematize and render the world intelligible. While the non-human animals in her photographs maintain form, Jaschinski's work, instead of attempting to provide the viewer with full access to a non-human animal body, relies on the tension between visibility and invisibility. The non-human animal becomes unlocatable. Turning away from empathy and anthropomorphizing, I call instead for Donna Haraway's conceptualization of joy, where play can be read as a form of creativity. In order to open up a space for constructing interspecies relations based on accountability, visual representations of non-human animals must recognize the otherness of non-human animals, not as less than human, but as entities that cannot be approached from a solely human-centric position. This embrace of the unknown proves crucial in order for us, human animals, to enter into relationships founded in mutual respect with other species. Thank you.